Global volatility. A look at the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And welcome to a special edition of Nexera News, where we cut through the noise to bring you the unfiltered truth about the world's most pressing conflicts. Today we diving deep into the tumultuous waters of the Middle East, in the frozen battlefields of Eastern Europe, asking, where are we at, and what are the major players doing? The conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza continues to be a devastating humanitarian crisis. Just recently, there was a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran, with U.S. President Donald Trump touting great progress in Gaza ceasefire talks. However, the situation remains incredibly precarious. Aid convoys are still struggling to reach those in desperate need, and reports of Israeli forces firing on crowds seeking food are tragically frequent. The core sticking point for a lasting peace remains. Hamas wants a full withdrawal of Israeli troops. The headlines this week confirm a significant development. Russia claims to have fully occupied Ukraine's Luhansk region, which, if confirmed, would be the first Ukrainian region entirely under Russian control since the invasion began. Kyiv has yet to comment. And an end to the war, while Israel insists on Hamas being disarmed and exiled. Russia continues its relentless long-range strikes on civilian areas, with Ukraine's Air Force recently reporting Russia's biggest aerial attack since the war began. Despite this, Ukrainian forces have managed to halt Russian advances in some areas, like the northern Sumy region, and are actively pushing back. We're talking about a war that has dragged on for over 20 months now, sparked by Hamas's brutal attack on October 7th. Russian President Vladimir Putin has effectively rejected a ceasefire, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Putin of stalling for peace. The human cost is immense, and the path to lasting peace in either region is fraught with challenges. As journalists, we'll continue to watch, report, and hope for a resolution to these unfolding sagas. The two sides have held brief rounds of talks in Istanbul, leading to prisoner exchanges, but no significant steps towards a ceasefire. In Ukraine, the U.S. has been Ukraine's largest military backer, providing vital aid. U.S. President Donald Trump recently met with Zelensky, suggesting that increased NATO defense spending could deter future Russian aggression. He also left open the possibility of sending more U.S.-made Patriot air defense missile systems. However, U.S. support has faced some internal doubts and political wrangling. In the Middle East, the U.S. has been heavily involved in ceasefire efforts between Israel and Hamas, and actively engaged in de-escalation with Iran, even engaging in direct strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities to show force. President Trump has urged progress in Gaza ceasefire talks and has credited U.S. interference in the Israel-Iran conflict with helping the Gaza situation. The U.S. also continues to provide extensive military and diplomatic support to Israel. 2023. The latest figures from Gaza's health ministry paint a grim picture. Over 56,500 Palestinians killed, with more than half reportedly women and children, Israeli officials. Meanwhile, state that over 860 Israeli soldiers have been killed since the war began, and some 50 hostages remain captive in Gaza, with fewer than half believed to be alive. Germany, for instance, is Ukraine's second-largest military backer after the U.S. There's a strong push from Europe to help Ukraine manufacture more weapons quickly, aiming to strengthen its negotiating position. However, there's also a clear reluctance from some European nations, like Germany, to provide certain long-range missiles due to fears of escalating the conflict and drawing NATO directly into the war. In the Israel-Gaza conflict, Europe's role has largely been one of humanitarian aid and diplomatic calls for de-escalation and a two-state solution. Though their influence remains varied across different member states, buckle up, because it's a bumpy ride. The Israel-Gaza nexus, a ceasefire on thin ice and military targets. Tense standoff ensued, with both sides claiming victory after a fragile ceasefire. Iran's supreme leader has even threatened further attacks on U.S. military bases if any more aggression occurs. The international community watches with bated breath, fearing a wider conflict. Let's start with the Middle East, a region perpetually on the brink. Ceasefire efforts have been a frustrating dance of on again, off again. Iran's role in this regional drama is undeniable. After recent Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear Ukraine, a grinding war of attrition now. Let's pivot to Eastern Europe, where the Russia-Ukraine war grinds on into its fourth year. This conflict is a brutal war of attrition, with thousands of troops and civilians killed. Peace talks have been, to put it mildly, a non-starter. What are Europe and America doing? So what about the big players on the global stage? Europe's role? European nations are deeply invested in the Ukraine conflict, providing significant military and financial aid to Kyiv. America's role, the United States, remains a pivotal actor in both conflicts. The global landscape remains incredibly complex, with interwoven conflicts and a delicate balance of power.